Hello, everybody. This is your boy Nerdicane. It's a cold and rainy day here in Atlanta, and it's a very apt setting for the day that we lost a hero. Stan Lee has passed away at 95 years old. He is, I shouldn't have to tell you who he is, absolute legend in the comic industry. We would not be looking at the comic industry as we have it today without him. And I'm not really going to get into the sad story of the last few years of his life, because other people have covered it. And I sort of want to be a little more inspirational. I want to talk to you guys to, maybe give you little words that pick your head up. And for all of us who are writing comics and create comics, and we'll just kind of remember his legacy as what he did to shape it. And hopefully in our own work, we'll take some inspiration from that. He was a vet. It's Veterans Day. He was in the Signal Corps. He was repairing telephone lines for the Army. And then he sort of got into entertainment there, where he did some training videos and a few cartoons. I think he was part of the staff that did Private Snafu back during World War II. But after that, he kind of went and lived as a normie, as so many of the greatest generation, as the veterans did. They left the war, and they just settled into these lifestyles that their children called boring, but their children really didn't understand the generation of Stan Lee. They didn't really understand what they had seen, what they had lived through, and how much easier the boomers had it. So there was the contrast in those two generations. But he was writing comic books and stories, but he was kind of, middling, and he was kind of bored with it. He was writing these really goofy monster stories and Western stories, and he was looking to get out of it. He was looking to a change. And his wife, Joan, who we love as well, she passed away a year ago. She told him one thing. I'll put it here I'll post it here in the pictures as well. She told him, go out. If you're getting out of this, you have nothing to lose. Go out and write the hero story that you want to write. And those words sort of launched the revolution in comic books. Those were the words that gave us Spider-Man. Spider-Man was the hero that he wanted, was a flawed hero. And that's really the beauty of Stan Lee's writing. In a time when Batman and Superman seemed like your parents, they were infallible, they were always right, they told you, eat your vegetables, do your homework, things like that, be a good citizen. The contrast in why Marvel was so popular with that generation is because these characters had flaws. They had anger issues. They had Peter Parker, before the death of Uncle Ben, was very arrogant, very cocky in his powers, and that's what made him a hero, is that shift, that realization of, with great power comes great responsibility. And that is what absolutely resonated with the audience through Spider-Man. And that's another thing about the brilliance of Stan Lee and his career. He understood, and it's something that we all strive to do. We try to understand what our audience wants to read, wants to see in a hero. And you have to understand the times, and you have to understand the audience very well. Steven Spielberg, years later, decades later, used that to great effect in his career. You have to know your audience. And really, Stan Lee, those are the principles that he created all these characters through. I'll miss him. I was fortunate enough a few years ago to get his autograph on a really great issue of the Fantastic Four. It was This Monster, This Man. It has an iconic cover. But as he was signing it, he was signing for hundreds of people. I feel good today. I can say goodbye, because I told him, I told him thank you when he was signing my comic book. I said to him, I said, thank you for everything you've done. Thank you for everything you've given us. And, you know, it's comfort for me. It makes me feel better. It lets me know that I was able to thank him. Even if it was my tiny little way, he probably doesn't even remember it. But I'll miss him. I'll miss his spirit. I'll always look fondly on his spirit and just his salesmanship, the self-proclaimed huckster that he was. And he really was part of what we came to love about Marvel. Is Marvel in those days, in its heyday, was so intertwined and linked with just the personality of Stan Lee. And that is truly, if you love Marvel, which I do, you can't help but love Marvel because they were so intertwined back in the 60s and 70s and 80s. He left during the 80s, but his footprint, his fingerprints stayed with the company for decades after he left. And, you know, let me tell you the story. I'll tell you the story of the first time I ever bumped into Stan Lee. And it's... They say never meet your heroes, but I did, and I'm really glad that I did. So I was at Dragon Con, and it was a Saturday. Dragon Con Saturday it's an absolutely insane day. And I'm going from the Hyatt... No, I'm going from the Marriott Marquis on the Sky Bridge to the Hilton. That was where the Hall of Virgins... I was going to go do some gaming. That's where the Hall of Virgins used to be. So as I'm entering the Hilton, I go left instead of right. Everybody usually goes right. I went left for some reason. And I bumped into somebody, and I hit him pretty solidly. And, you know, being the polite Southerner I am, I turned and I said, "Oh, I'm sorry, excuse me." And just like that, just like a cameo in my own life, the guy who I bumped into, he turned around, and it was Stan Lee. And he just... You know, he gave me that smile, and he gave me a little wave, and he just went about his day. I think he was going to a panel. And that was, you know, that was perfect. That was a really beautiful situation. It was, for me, it was my personal cameo. Stan Lee made a cameo in my memory. So, I'll say it again. Let's all, you know, in what we create, in what we do, even if we're not doing comic books, even if we're, like I'm getting into, a programmer, let's all strive to take the advice of Joan, to live our career like Stan. Let's try to do what we do, and let's try to do the thing that we want to do in whatever field we're doing. But that's all I got for this. Once again, Stan Lee, I know you can't hear me, but thank you. Thank you, Stan Lee. Thank you for everything you've done. And to all of us out there who are in comics, let's reflect on his life and his career, and let's try to go out and love comics, and go find a comic, or even create a comic. Create the comic that you want to see created. And if it's a passion project of yours, it may not sell like Jawbreakers, but at least you'll look at it. You'll get to look at it and say, I did this. This is the comic I wanted to make. Thank you once again. Thank you to Stan Lee. Thank you for everything you've done for comics and comic culture. That's all I got for this. It's a sad day, but hopefully you guys can take a little bit of, get a little smile out of this stuff, and you know, let's just remember our fond memories of Stan. Thank you all for listening to my little story about Stan Lee when I bumped into him. And tomorrow's another day. You know, we got new comic book day coming up. Let's go find something we love. And yeah, thank you all. Have a good day.